everyone's life is a novel if you just think about it. Think of what's happened through your whole life. Right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. There's actually the other thing I've always thought of. Everything that you can look, there's a story behind everything.
Sure.
Right, attached to someone.
Right.
I have to put a microphone on the camera. Yeah, that's Mom.
That's it?
Yeah, so let's just get a slate. Mom. Okay.
Hi.
So
Do I look old?
feeding. Let me just see. Oh, I think I also want a headphone. Okay, so. Ooh, I kind of thought I want to have one on me as well, but you know what? It's good at this point. It don't matter. Hey, Robert. Okay, so can I hear you say something?
Something?
Yes, perfect. Okay, so I went recently to no, I'm gonna be right here. Right here. I went recently to I did a shoot in Pennsylvania, a horror film in the woods, and I was camping out, and I had some time to think, and I was in the tent at night, and it was dark, and I started thinking that my daughter's she's gonna have a lot of questions, as probably I did, as you know, or still
How
do.
did you get here?
Well, it's more like I want to know, you know, who
Your
my
father
father
is.
was, you know,
Yeah.
basically, you know, I mean, maybe you could give me like, you know, some kind of a general thing, and then I'm going to ask you specific questions.
Well, you know, when you first mentioned this to me, and I know we spoke about this before, and I was talking to our house guest, Jenny, and I said, I never spoke to the children about their father at all. Why didn't I ever do this? And I think there were a couple of reasons. First of all, because it was a traumatic thing, and I think I kind of blocked it out of my mind. And second of all, because I went home to live with my parents, and they had so disapproved of the marriage, so I really could never talk about it to them at all. So I kind of just blocked it out. Today, in my mind, I feel as though almost I can't believe that part of my life ever even happened.
This is not what we're concerned with.
No,
Listen,
well,
I
this
know,
is the
but
background.
I
Okay.
understand, but I mean, my child isn't going to be concerned
No,
with why you
okay.
didn't tell me. My child is only wants to know. We want to get to the meat that you didn't get to before.
All right.
Forget about why. I'm not sad about it.
All right. Well, the thing, are you filming this from the
Mhm.
beginning?
Yeah.
Okay. When I was about 19 years old, I had a job working for my father, and he had a beauty parlor in Great Neck. And your father was working there as well. And he was 14 years older than I was, and I would speak to him all the time. He was a nice person, and I had a boyfriend actually in Great Neck, someone who was 5 years older than I was, and I was not really happy with this guy. He was not, well, anyway, for one reason or another, And Danny kept saying to me, well, you know, you're a young girl, you should go out to dances, which people did in those days. They would go to dances and meet some people and do stuff. And I didn't know how to dance. So he said, well, he was dying to take dancing lessons and we could go together. This was totally unromantic. There was no romance between us. But we used to go to the dancing lessons once a week. And he was really kind, and we spoke, and sooner or later a romance did develop. And what I'm trying to think of the natural progression of things. I think that he realized, first of all, that you know, he was older, and we really he was treading on dangerous grounds, and he wanted everything to be on the up and up. And it was very quickly that he said that we should get married. And my parents, you know, I wasn't allowed to come home after 10 o'clock and do all these things, and I worked for my father, so I was on a very short leash anyway. But as it happened, he said, well, you have to go, we have to speak to your parents and tell them that we wanted to get married. And my mother just went absolutely out of her mind. She just went crazy. And we had a plan then that he was going to go down to Florida and I would move into his apartment until, I think first we got a marriage license, but you understand how things were in those days. I couldn't never have moved into his apartment or anything like that. So he went to Florida, and my mother was a person that said, if you do this, I'll never forgive you. And you could have taken that to the bank. That was in granite. So that's what happened. And the day he came home from Florida, we got married.
1 second. I am recording in here, guys. I mean, keep it, you don't, just try to keep it down.
So I knew at the time that we got married that he had medical problems, although it had been under control for a long time. He had Crohn's disease, and he had really major surgery. And in those years, I don't think they still treat it in the same way, but they had removed, you know, a portion of his intestine and everything. But he did really well. So we got married, and another thing I realized, and I don't know if this, how you feel about this. I want to tell you, first of all, I was very happy being married, and I am very happy being married now. I just feel as though I need an other in order to be a whole person. And I was very contented. He was very good to me, and we had no problems at all. I never thought of not being married to him. But now, at this age, I know that part of the reason that I did get married was to leave my parents. Whether, I'm not to say that it was bad, it was not bad, but I know really that was one of the reasons that I did it. And because he was older and settled, and he had a beautiful apartment, and one thing or another, that's probably had a lot of impact. If he had been somebody 19 or 20 years old, it probably wouldn't have worked out the way it did. But at any rate, so we were moved into his apartment, which was really a beautiful apartment. He had gorgeous furniture and everything, and but he decided that we would buy a house. And in those years, we bought a house. It was $990 was the price of the house.
$1,800.
$18,000. You put $2,000 down, and you had a house on Long Island in Plainview, and it was a lovely house too. So we moved into the house, and he bought me a car, and I had a little job, and he had opened at that time his own beauty parlor, and it was in Lake Success, which was outside of Great Neck. And everything was just hunky-dory. I became pregnant about a year and a half after I was married, and I had a miscarriage, and I didn't become pregnant again after that. And I think the pressure was kind of on. First of all, he was older, and by that time we were married 3-4 years, and I didn't become pregnant again. And because it was a lot easier to do, and he said, how about adopting a baby? And I said, fine. And we adopted a baby boy, Jonathan. And shortly after, it was like 8 months after I found out I was pregnant, and there came Michael, and then came Robert. I thought, this is way too easy now. But when I found out I was pregnant with Robert, and at that time you had to wait 6 weeks even before the doctor could, you had to be 6 weeks late, and before the doctor could even tell you that you were pregnant for certain. And I think the week I found out, then he had a perforated ulcer, which is actually your stomach explodes and all the contents of your stomach are just blown along your body. And he had emergency surgery and had just infections because of the nature of the illness. It's a dirty wound, and it's internal, and he was really, really terribly sick, and stayed in the hospital. Finally, he came home, still kept getting these infections all the time, and he went into the Veterans Hospital in Brooklyn. It was Fort Hamilton, Brooklyn, which is past Coney Island. And he stayed there. He was home trying to build up some strength when Robert was born. So that's how long he was in the hospital. And he was there when Robert was born. And then at that time, he was supposed to go back into the hospital for more surgery, major surgery, and he did. After Robert was a couple of weeks old, he went back into the hospital and had surgery. At that point, when he came home and was convalescing, and everything seemed to be fine, and we had a house, and he had this shop, and he had another beauty parlor in between that, also in Great Neck, and his partner, a huge big place, his partner had bought him out, and we held notes on it. He was paying us notes, but we sold the house, we sold the second shop, and we had the notes from the first place that he had. So we had quite a nest egg, and we bought a travel trailer, which this apartment is bigger than, reminds me kind of. And when Robert was 3 months old, we packed the 2 little boys and the baby in the back seat of the car, and decided, because Jonathan had bronchial asthma all the time, that we would get away from New York, and we thought it would be a good place to go and check out Phoenix. And we left New York, and we went down to Florida, and we stayed there for the winter in, one of these, it was a place on the beach. It was nice, and, pulled the trailer in and stayed there with the children. Everything was very lovely. And then I think you'll know exactly when this was, and I don't really know what the date was, but we started driving cross country, heading towards Phoenix, and we were someplace in just a no-name town in Texas, and it came on the radio that Jack Kennedy was shot when we were in Texas. And in Dallas, of course, he was shot. And so whatever year that was. And we stopped into a motel. They had a television set in the foyer there, in the hallway, in the lobby. And we went in and we were watching this, and actually heard on a Mexican broadcast that you could pick out that the president was muerte, the president was dead. And that was our day in Texas anyway, the last day I was in Texas.
Did you tell us that we had been in a parallel
yes, right.
travel path with
Right.
the murderer?
Well, Kennedy was in Florida when we were in Florida, and then we left also, and then kind of moving westward, and we had no idea that he was in Texas until we heard on the radio that he had been shot. Yeah, it was a terrible, terrible time. And we had gone into this motel, as I said, to watch this on television, and there was a Ronald Reagan rally there, and that in that year that he started being politically active at that time. And so the place was full of Republicans anyway, and this one guy in the lobby was crying, and he said, "I don't care if the son of a bitch dies, but why did he have to die in Texas?" Like it gave his state a bad name. So he wasn't really loved there anyway, but continued on eventually and went to Phoenix, and we bought a huge, well, what we had a couple of years ago was a manufactured house, but this was still like a huge house trailer. It was very lovely, and it wasn't just a straight box, it had a couple of rooms that came out, and lived there very happily. As a matter of fact, Jonathan went to kindergarten there, so that's how long we were there. And then all of a sudden, Danny started to get sick again, and what happened is the infections started to come back. I guess they were always in his body, really. Couldn't kill them, and started having a lot of pain and everything. And he said that we would sell what we had there and go back to New York. I wonder if he really knew, or a funny thing, at one point, he was seeing a doctor there and having so much pain, and the doctor was giving him a lot of painkillers, a lot of pain medication. And I said, don't you think this is kind of dangerous? Suppose he becomes addicted to this stuff. And the doctor said, it doesn't really matter. And
He knew he was going to die.
I was kind of shocked, but it didn't really sink in with me. I bet that he knew that he was going to die, or maybe the doctor said something to him. Well, and in the meantime, I had gone to college when I was there. I took like 2 years of college there while we were living in Phoenix. But anyway, then we sold everything that was there, and we packed up a few belongings, and maybe a couple of them I see here, like these chairs, we brought cross country in a little teeny, not even a travel trailer, but it was just one of these utility things that you rent from U-Haul, and threw them in and came back to New York. And we went to stay with Danny's sister on Long Island, and we were there, just all the kids and the furniture and the whole thing. And we were there about 2 days, and he drove all the way back to New York, took like 5-7 days, whatever it was, and said, you better take me back to the Veterans Hospital. And he went into the Veterans Hospital and died, I think, in less than a week. Amazing that, so he, at one point in the hospital, he said to me, I think you should take the kids and go back to your mother's house. I had no place to go. I had no insurance. Had never worked in my life except working for my father. Had no money except the little furniture things, the few things that we brought back, and they were all in my sister-in-law's basement. And I had no choice. I went back to my parents' house, and my mother had not really ever seen these three children. I just appeared on her doorstep with three little children. And Barbara was still living, my sister Barbara was still living at home, and Joe was living in Paris. So we moved into a room in my mother's house, and I guess at one point I was very upset and unhappy, and my mother said, you have three beautiful children, you can't, you have a lot to be thankful for, you should just be glad you have these children. But I had nothing else in the world but the children. And at any rate, so what happened then, I think I realized I would probably have to get a job, and I went, first I went back to Queens College for a while, and at that point, Barbara was still, as I said, living at home, but what she did, I guess she was dying to move out of the house, but this was not ever done in those days. A girl living at home just couldn't move out and have an apartment, so she took the opportunity to say that she couldn't stand being there with these children, and it's so noisy and everything, and she was going to take an apartment with another girl in Manhattan, and she did. And she was going with John McMahon at that time, and by that time, it had been like 7 years or something that they were together. So, but when she was still at home, and John was always in our house, and every time they would go out someplace, they would always say, come on, and John was that, come on, you're gonna come with me, and don't hang around here. And so they took me here, there, and every place, and every time we would go someplace, and John saw somebody he knew, he would say, here's a friend of mine, and then they would disappear and leave me there. So they did that one night in Patrick's Irish Pub, and it was Hughie O'Haire. And anyway, so that was the beginning of another episode, and I had gone out with a couple of people in between that time, but I guess, that from the first night I went out with you, that was it. There was never anybody else. We broke up a lot of times because he said, we could never really be together. He had never been married. He didn't even have a job at that point because he had just gotten out of the Navy, and he couldn't deal with just having this family all of a sudden, and then he was living at home with his parents, and kept breaking up. We would get back together, just let's go out, just have dinner or something like that, and that would be the beginning again. And this went on for about 2 or 3 years, and then finally he said, well, if we could have a place where we could all live, and by that time he had a job, and I had a job, and if we had a place where we could all live and there was plenty of space, that we could get married. But we didn't get married. We found a place, and we told my parents we were married. I don't know why we didn't. We got a marriage license, and we just never actually did it. And so we found this place in Cold Spring Harbor, which was like a fun house, I guess. It was this huge place with all these rooms, and we always had all of these strange people coming and going, and the kids loved the beach, and then we got a dog, Lolita, and kind of settled in there in kind of a dysfunctional way, I guess. And finally, Hugh got a wonderful job working for Levitt and Son, and he was first working for an advertising agency, and this was really a good job for him. And he was able to buy a house, a Levitt house, and they gave you a 10% discount. Now, a 10% discount on a house is a pretty nice discount, and his father actually gave us $8,000 as a down payment. We had not a nickel, of course. And so we bought the house in Plainview. And I guess the big fly in
the... Coram.
Coram, yes, of course. And the big problem looming in our life, and I didn't really realize it at the time, is that Hugh was just drinking too much. And I guess in the beginning he was just drinking and he was funny, but it got to be a problem. And we lived there. We were really poor because we didn't have two nickels to rub together, and whatever we had, I had a job working for Metropolitan Life, which was a terrible job, but anyway, after a little while, we knew that I couldn't keep working. The kids were totally out of control at home, and I quit the job, and God, we couldn't pay bills. I mean, we had people calling up, bill collectors and everything, and I can't remember what magic event happened that all of a sudden, well, Hugh had the job in Levitt, and...
Did the Social Security come through?
Oh, we always got the Social Security.
Because I remember we had that and the Levitt money.
And that really kept us
had.
going, was the income that I had from Social Security and his job. And other than that, we were really in bad shape. I don't know what finally happened to him, but I guess it was like we had been together for 9 years altogether, and all of a sudden, I think his mother had died, and she was just a classic alcoholic. Not even, Hugh always kept his job, and he always went to work, even though he would spend the money he made, but he never missed work or anything like that because of his drinking. But his mother was really crippled by alcoholism, and I think when she died, he really could see the way he was going, and he went to AA. First of all, he went in and said that he had this job of authority, and he was some kind of a manager, and he had a problem with an employee, and he was trying to get information about alcoholism, and finally just shocked me by saying he was going to AA, and he went in Stony Brook and got sober. He's been sober 31 years, and...
But didn't he get a DWI? I thought
he
that
did.
prompted it.
No.
Oh,
That didn't prompt him at all. That was just part of the game. That was just part of it. Everybody he knew had...
Because it was right around that time that he quit, right around he had that DWI.
Well, he had lawyer friends he used to drink with, and they got him off with, he lost his license for 6 months. I had to keep driving him around every place, but it was really, that didn't really slow him down. It wasn't, I think, and I think when his mother died, he had such a terrible, like a drunken binge after that, and I think that really sobered him up, actually. After that, I guess our life together got progressively better. And he always says the thing he kind of shocked the children because behind their back he stopped really putting, the soberer he got, the less he restrained them, because he was a maniac, of course, when he was drinking, and very authoritarian to say the least. And then all of a sudden he kind of mellowed out slowly, but he never told them he was mellowing out slowly, so they still were walking on tiptoes. It took years before they realized that he was semi-sane again. And things did get a whole lot better. It really did. And eventually he got better jobs. When he went to work for the CSEA, he wasn't in AA that long, and I don't know why, but he told his boss that he was in AA. The guy who interviewed him, and you know what? He was also in AA, and for a long time. And Hugh said he was kind of afraid of admitting this, and he said, Hugh, nobody ever lost their job for being sober. So, yeah. And he hit it off really well with this guy and had a really successful run at the CSEA. It was a good job, paid great money.
Was his name Jack Tannenbaum? What was his name?
No, Ed Cleary.
Ed Cleary. Okay.
And he had died at one point.
But Jack Tannenbaum was another one of the guys that worked there, right?
I think Tannenbaum was involved with Levitt. I'm not 100% sure. He was like a really big guy. But at any rate, Irving Flannenbaum was the head of the union. Maybe that's who you were thinking. And while he was working for the CSEA, he was also Long Island stringer for the New York Times, taught 2 semesters in Queens College, and wrote freelance articles. So
that's what happens when you get sober.
And, well, because first of all, the CSEA, he had a lot of free time, so he was able to, and we had, at that point, we had quite a bit of money, and we had the house, and then through contacts, somebody he met on Long Island, Pranay, an Indian fellow, he had a full-time, he was a staff member of the Times, and he was offered, because there was like an Indian mafia in the UN, he was offered a job, Pranay that was, in the UN, and he didn't want to tie himself down. He wanted to be like a freelance contractor, and he was working all these angles, and he said to Hugh, you know, you could get this job, I'll recommend you, and he did. And then that was another, it was really like a midlife crisis, a change, because we had a house on Long Island. We had 4 cars in the family. We had a dog, a cat, and the 3 kids were growing up. And we threw everybody out of the house and rented it, and took this roach-infested apartment in Long Island City. And he went to work for the UN. I got a job in Manhattan. And that was really a life change for us.
And that's how we ended up in New York City.
And that's how we ended up, because part of the deal, Hugh said, when we were on Long Island, I could get this job in the UN, and if I take it, I am not going to commute 2 hours each way on the Long Island Railroad. He said, first of all, that would break up our marriage. I couldn't be on the train for 4 hours a day and come home and lead another life here. So I think we were just ready. I mean, you kids were just about all grown. Jonathan went to Los Angeles to the Olympics, and Michael was in his last semester in Stony Brook University, and we got him a room with Stephen Moore in his house, remember? And you were down in Florida. You were down in Florida with Grandma and Grandpa. And when you came home, your house was gone, and your room was gone, and your dog was gone.
And I was in Manhattan, Queens.
And you were in Queens, but I remember
1983.
I remember when you first came back to Queens and you had your skateboard and you went out, and I guess you went into Manhattan and you came home and you said, I look like a farmer. Nobody else dresses the way I look. You had on your sneakers and you had white tube top socks that came up to your knees and cut off jeans, not homeboy jeans, but cut off jeans and a t-shirt, and you said, I look like a farmer.
I don't remember that. That's great. That's great.
So we had to go out and buy you some black t-shirts and make you feel as though you belonged.
Yeah.
And what else could I tell you? And
So okay, so that's okay. So now basically, more specifically, I want to ask you.
yes,
All right, you told me some great things about my father, and that's great.
Yeah.
That's excellent. And I feel like I
you,
know
could you
what-
understand where I was coming from with this? And as
Totally,
I said,
entirely.
can you understand, and please understand why I never spoke about it that
No,
much?
Look, I'm not sweating it.
Yeah.
You actually told, anytime I asked you,
Oh,
you told
okay.
me something.
Yeah,
You didn't tell me that much though.
yeah,
But here's what I want to know.
yes.
Okay, I want to know, what kind of books did my father read?
God, I
Did he?
don't-
What kind of did he read the newspaper when he got home?
God,
Get inside. Okay. All right.
I don't
If
know.
that doesn't strike you, what did he find funny? Was he a funny man? Was he a sober man? Was he?
Oh,
Tell me
no.
about what kind of person he was.
Oh, God.
I mean, I want to know. I mean, I didn't get everything from you and Grandpa.
No.
I mean, certainly some of the characteristics. I mean, was he just a serious guy that liked
Well,
to cut hair?
no. When he was a kid,
Yeah.
he came from a really, here's, all
Where
right,
is he from?
from Brooklyn. And
his
he would,
family is a Russian. He's a Russian Jew.
yeah, his mother was born in this country, and I
Uh-huh.
believe
Oh,
his
okay.
father was as well.
Excellent. That's good to know.
But he came with a really rough crowd. He used to hang around with some really rough people, gangsters in Brooklyn, and he was in some trouble in his life, and he.
So was this an exciting man to you because he was a little bit?
No, I
um,
didn't really
No,
know
he was just a nice man who asked you to go dancing.
after all of
At
that
first.
that he had gone through. Yeah.
But I mean, you never saw any. I mean, he wasn't like you never saw him. He wasn't doing like
Oh, no, no.
deals or
No,
like
no, no, no.
things fall off the back of a truck or anything
No,
like that.
but he was involved with some people, and he came from a really bad neighborhood, East New
Yeah.
York, in Brooklyn, which even in those years was, well, it wasn't what it is today,
Okay.
but it was a horrible,
Yeah.
horrible neighborhood. And when he was a kid,
Yeah.
and the family, I think, was on welfare, and his father had died very young, and he was the only boy, and he had 3 sisters. And he went into the CCC, and you probably don't know what this was. It was Franklin Roosevelt started this for inner city kids, and because of the Depression and there were such hard times, and people couldn't afford, like there would be no jobs, and people couldn't afford to keep children, and he started this program for young men where he would take young men from the cities and send them, it was the Civilian Conservation Corps, sent them out, and if you ever come out to Oregon, you will see there's all these beautiful like waysides, and they have stone bridges, and
Mhm. Built by these people.
these kids were put up in camps and fed and housed, and they got a few dollars spending money, and they were put to work building things, which was a wonderful. If they could do that today with these kids that have no chance to do anything except maybe
Get
sell
skill,
drugs,
too.
teach them a skill.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, he learned, I think, woodworking or something. He was fantastic. Carpentry. He made
Excellent.
things like furniture that you just wouldn't believe it. And he would sand it down and give it a coat of paint, and then sand it down and give it a coat of paint, like 9 layers and as smooth as satin.
Okay.
And so he learned that. And as a matter of fact, he had cut off the very tip of one finger in a sawmill. And so he spent time working in the CCCs, which was a thing that he always talked about for his life. So he did, that was a good thing. And then he was in the paratroopers at one time, and I was just watching in the U.S. Army. He was in the paratroopers, and he was injured, actually, and I don't think he ever was in any combat because he was in the end of his training, and he said they always told them in the training classes that if you jump and you feel like everybody else is going up and you're still coming down, it means you're falling. You're not gliding anymore. And he looked around and he looked up at his chute and he saw that the whole thing was split open, and that's how he got out of the Army. He fell
And hurt himself.
and hurt him, and he was injured.
Okay.
And
Like a back or something?
I
Back
think,
injury, something?
yeah, something like that. But it wasn't something disabling, but
So he wasn't a feeble man. I mean,
Oh,
he
no,
wasn't
no,
a
no.
sickly man all his life.
No.
Because that's the idea that I get.
no. Well, the trouble with this Crohn's disease, and Michael has some,
Symptoms.
not of that, but the thing that he has, the spondylitis, is related to Crohn's disease. And it's an autoimmune disease, which means that you're infecting your own body or whatever. And it doesn't manifest itself till you're in your early 20s, and once you're past that age, you would never get it. Like you would never get it, for example. But just think that you may pass this on to your daughter. I mean, that's a scary thought, but it is a consideration that you should at least be aware of. But they treat these things a whole lot differently. Crohn's disease is still not a really nice disease, but they don't do what they used to do. They don't do all these surgeries and keep cutting you up all the time. They treat it with medication.
So, anything else about him?
I'm trying to think of what.
How old was I when he died? I don't know.
Well, you were not 3 years old. You.
So he died 1960, 59.
59.
John was born in 59,
No.
wasn't he?
No, you were born. John was born in 59.
That's what I'm saying.
Michael was born in 61.
61, I was
You were born in
63.
63. So he probably died like in 65. It had to be. He had to be alive when you were born, Robert.
I'm not doubting that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, that was the chain of events, and so, yeah. Well, I was just. He died just around my 29th birthday, and I'm 70.
So I remember my father Hugh had an apartment. In the back of the apartment was
Right.
a railroad trestle that it was like a big steep
Oh, that was in
hill
Roslyn, yeah.
and he had a piano in the apartment.
Right.
And that was his apartment.
Yeah, he
Right?
got that after his
And
parents his parents sold his house, sold their house, and they moved out to Greenport, and then his father actually got that apartment for him. I mean, then he paid the rent afterwards.
Now, you were living in Plainview? Weren't we living in Plainview in a little apartment before you got married to Pop?
No, Floral Park.
Floral Park, that's
Right.
Floral
It was a
Park.
terrible apartment.
I remember that. I mean, slightly remember that. Did we have bunk beds?
Yeah.
I remember that.
Really.
I remember that. that's so spooky, but it's the only thing I think I can
And
remember.
yeah,
I remember I remember a Bohax somewhere too.
yeah.
Where was that? Was that?
Well, that it was like next to the apartments.
That was okay, but it was there.
Right.
That's so spooky to remember.
Well, you know that they say that you really can't remember much before your third birthday. You know?
Yeah,
And I remember we lived in my grandmother's basement when I was little.
Yeah.
I remember my mother giving me a bath in the kitchen sink because I would look out the window over the sink and I would see my grandfather coming down the alley and I was sitting in the kitchen sink having my bath and my grandfather would come and look in the window and talk to me.
Take a seat, Pop.
You know? And that, you know, I could go on but about the things I remember in life, but
those are good. All of those are good.
Thinking about this house and the trailer, though, that was really.
Hello.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Did I keep
Thank you so much.
Ask her if she got the pictures.
I didn't know she
Everyone's doing great.
What, honey?
Lisa. I don't have
Mother
Lisa's
and
number.
daughter,
Whose?
they're
Lisa or Lyra.
Oh.
Leah.
Leah, I have it.
You better go call her.
Okay, why don't you call her?
I don't know what her number is.
I'm going to give it to you. I have it right here. No, I have it in my phone book. Could you move this one? Okay. Did she get the pictures? Well, that was the question of the hour.
Yeah, I'll get it on.
Thinking about, is it time? Is it on? Thinking about how crowded your little family feels in this apartment, but when Robert was 3 months old and we left for Florida, we had the car and we had, I guess it was 20-foot long travel trailer. It was 20 feet long and about 8 feet wide.
This
And
is bigger than that.
I know, I'm telling you. And we had three. We had Jonathan. Jonathan was about 4. We had 2-year-old Michael, and we had a baby Robert, and 2 adults, and we were all in this travel trailer, and it was constructed so it had a table and like 2 banquettes in the front, and this table folded down and foam mattress flipped over it so it became a bed, and there was a little teeny refrigerator, like something you would have under your desk in work or something, and a sink and an oven, no microwave. They didn't have microwave ovens then. And then it had a little teeny bathroom that I think the toilet and the shower were like one. There was a drain on the floor, and if you wanted to take a shower, you had to close the toilet and take a shower. And then there were like some drawers next to that where all our clothes were. And then in the back were 2 bunk beds, like 4 bunk beds actually, 2 on each side. And I had a little travel crib in one of the lower bunks, and then the other kids, and on one of the bunks, of course, we had a bunch of stuff, storage stuff. And we lived in that for about 6 months, like that. And just, it didn't really feel like it was that crowded, but that was our house. Anyway, so.
How about the escalator story? Tell me
The escalator story.
when that happened.
When the escalator story happened is after Danny's last surgery. He was home and recovering, and he said, there's, I think, a garden show or a home show. It was at Roosevelt Field, which was, they didn't even have a shopping mall there, but it was Roosevelt Raceway. They used to have horse races there, and they had, some like the Coliseum, like shows, trade shows, or this was the Home and Garden show. So we went in and we said to the guard, we wanted to go upstairs. And he said, could you tell us how to go upstairs? And he said, well, everybody just takes the carriage and you put the back wheels on the escalator and you go up. And it was, could you stop this for a second? Or you can't?
I can. It's just you're in the
Oh,
middle.
okay.
Anything could be stopped.
Okay.
It's a
Well-
matter of we're in the middle of it.
All right.
If you could make your call another time after we're done with this,
No, I can't.
well,
Is she answering, huh?
It's on the phone.
Oh, wow. Well, how are the cats?
What do you want to look at?
Anyway, so anyway, the guy said to take.
could hang on a second. Please don't open the door again, please. Thank you.
We
So we're at the there's a
Well,
home
oh,
and
yeah.
garden show.
Yeah.
And we're at the
and we wanted to go up the stairs. So the guard said, put the back wheels of the carriage and just hold it and go on up. So here was Danny standing on the escalator holding the carriage up, and I'm standing behind him with one hand is holding the hand of each of the small children, and there's a bunch of people coming up. And this was an escalator that was going up like 5 stories in the air. It wasn't just an escalator. It was this huge big thing. And we're going merrily along, and all of a sudden he turned around and he said, we can't fit through the top. And that was just before we got there, So there wasn't even time to react, to do anything. And we're going up, and there's the carriage just wedged into the top. And then I fell forward, the kids fell forward, people coming up behind us kept piling on top. A man that was way behind, I don't know how he did it, he leapt up over the side of the thing and shut it off. There's an emergency switch, on the top, like a red button or something. But in the meantime, everybody, and people are screaming and everything, but before this happens, the pressure of all these people, and the carriage went boom, and I could see my baby is wrapped up in the receiving blanket, this tight little package, and he went turning through the air like this, and I just was hysterical, not screaming, I was hysterical. My baby, and a woman standing there had the baby. She caught the football. It may have been Joe Namath's mother. I don't know what happened. And I was hysterical, and she was holding the baby in her arms when I piled off this elevator, and I kept screaming to her, my baby, my baby. And she said, I am not giving you your baby unless you calm yourself down first. And I shut up very fast, and he was sound asleep, and he was perfect. This was in the summer, and Robert was born June 6th, so he couldn't have been more than 2 months or so old then, and he was just this little package. And
born June 1st.
June 1st, yes. June 6th was something else.
That's D-Day.
Yeah, that was the day. Anyway, they took us into an office. I guess they smelled lawsuit right there, and I was just still carrying on like a fool, and all of us had our knees and shins were totally scraped up because I was down on the escalator.
It's
churning, and the other, Michael and Jonathan, had they were clueless. They were just came along. I guess they were kind of shocked by it. I wonder, does Jonathan remember this incident at all? I bet he doesn't. He probably wasn't even old enough. So that was the famous escalator story, and it's something, God, I'll never forget that. I need a glass of water now.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, you need a glass of water before you sing Mississippi Mud.
Oh my God. I need a glass of wine before I sing Mississippi Mud. I can't do it sober. What, honey?
Fucking pain in the ass. I was about to come in here and get my stuff and leave. I'm about to leave.
So what did she say?
Oh, we had a long talk. You know, everything's fine. Everything's doing okay. Cats are having a lot of fun. Blue's walking through her hair. And
Yeah.
Cat's walking through her hair. And Minky's,
Molly?
Minnie's running all around. Molly's
Yeah,
running all
good.
around. Now,
That's
I gotta
all.
get uptown. What, are you finished?
I don't think so, but I have to get a drink of water. My voice is cracking.
She's basically finished. She's just got to sing Mississippi Mud in E flat.
Because I gotta get out of here.
Okay.
You do? So
Yeah,
you're not
he-
gonna get interviewed today.
No, he's no, he's got to meet.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, he's got to meet.
Well, I gotta meet at 6:15 up at,
I learned a lot of things about you.
well, tell me this. I gotta, maybe tell me how long this will take us.
Yeah.
I gotta be up at 74th Street
Yeah.
at 6:15.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's over on, I can get you the address, that's the whole thing.
We're on 74. West side or east side?
I'm not sure, I think it's slightly on the west side.
Let's see the address.
That's what I'm trying to do, okay.
Yeah, man. Take your time.
Chills too. The chill thing just went off, don't let me forget that. One Huss Church.
Am I allowed to move with this? Oh, I wanted to go and have a pee, but I guess I can't.
Okay. It's not. Oh.
Suppose this drops
But
in the
it's
toilet.
attached to your belt. Okay, here. Well. Yeah, it's attached to here. It won't
There it
fall
is.
off.
Okay.
Jeez, between First and Second Avenue. Oh.
Yeah, you're
Oh, that's easy.
So you need to
74,
take.
74th Street.
So take the.
72nd Street, huh?
You take the 456 to 68th Street.
Oh,
Hunter
60th.
College.
And where do we get the 456 over back over at
That's
Where
the
we
place
took
right
it
near
last
Kmart,
night,
good old
hon.
Kmart.
Well, we took it last night.
Okay. And it's
Did she get the pictures?
We're
No.
gonna have to try to resend it again. Do you want to talk to Evelyn now? She's done with her interview.
No, not quite. I'm just having a pee break.
Oh, you're on a break? Oh no, she's on a break. She's got a cordless mic on. Yeah.
I can't drop it in the toilet.
You should see his apartment this guy had last night.
Attached to.
It's up on Riverside Drive, and this guy got one of those old
I
tracks.
just did a shoot up.
So call the show tonight. If
I
you
will.
know,
Super.
she'll-
Yeah.
And this
Yes, they may come around noontime on Saturday to pick you guys up from here. If you,
But we can't do that because we have to be out of the apartment Friday morning so the girl's boyfriend could come. I say,
well, you can bring this stuff here, and they can pick you up here.
I
to
found
bring
Peter
it to,
Normandy on the
where
web.
they are.
Does he have
Show 'em,
his
because
photos?
they want to
Yeah,
see the
he and
baby
Ross
as well
Muir
on Saturday.
doing wedding photography.
we still have to be out of
But there's
that
another
apartment
guy.
on Friday morning.
He took
Do,
this?
but I
Oh,
don't.
not.
I thought that
No,
was
I mentioned Friday because she mentioned school
I don't know.
for Megan.
Now,
Oh, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, because then you guys get a ride
There's
back
another
to
guy,
school.
Peter Normandy, an actor.
we can't wait till
So you gotta watch
Saturday.
out.
They
He
want to
also
come in
is Peter
Saturday.
Normandy, Cold Spring Harbor,
Oh,
wedding
Friday.
photography.
Because they mentioned Megan get out of school half a day.
Okay.
Do you
Because she
think?
doesn't go to school on Saturday.
Okay. All right, I'll talk to her tonight.
Guy?
I know he's in the program. I know he's in AA. I spoke to him. You know,
Hit
I-
it, Mississippi Mud.
found-
I want some
I
singing
found
and
Peter.
dancing.
I found Peter Normandy and Ross Muir on the web.
I've got
Why
2
don't you
minutes,
send
Mother,
Peter
on
a?
this tape.
Okay.
Well, I should talk to Peter. Okay.
Can you could be stay in here. You just have to be quiet or close the door.
I'm
Okay, could just I got 2 minutes on the tape. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
When sun goes down, tide goes out, people gather round, they all begin to shout. Hey, hey, Uncle died, it's street to beach, feet on the Mississippi mud. What a dance do they do? Lordy, how I'm telling you, they don't need no man. Keep time by clapping their hands, just happy as a cow, chewing on a cud. It's street to beach, feet on the Mississippi mud.
Okay, you know what I just realized? There's also a song.
You realize that there's no film in the camera.
Yeah, but you know what? One more. There's a song that you did, and the last part of the song is the captain was a duck.
This is one. Now, this is interesting because this is a song that my mother learned when she was in kindergarten. So this is a song that's very, very old, and it may be from another generation. And you could pass it on to your baby girl. And could I sing it now?
Yeah, because I'm running out of tape.
I saw a ship a-sailing upon the silvery sea, and oh, it was all laden with wondrous things to see. There were apples in the cabin and comfits in the hold. The sails were made of silk and the masts were made of gold. The 24 sailors that stood between the decks were 24 white mice with chains about their necks. And the captain was a duck with a packet on his back. And when the ship began to sail, the captain said, "Quack, quack." Isn't that a wonderful? And I spent half my childhood wondering, what the hell is a comfort? Did you ever think of that?
Comfort.
Comfort. But a comfort is actually an archaic term, and I think it's some kind of a sweet, what they would call a sweetmeat in England. A comfit, C-O-N-F. I think it's like the same, comfit, like confectionery.
The
is
holds were filled with comforts.
No,
That's
it's
what I thought.
comfits.
Oh, okay.
And like, if you think of the word confectionery, I
Right.
think that's what the root is, comfit.
Okay.
C-O-N as in Nelly, F-I-T.
Uh-huh.
So whatever that is.
Well, the tape is out, but the audio is still running, and I got the very end of the song and you laughing about it.
Yeah.
So that was just.
Good.
I have to say that I just am so.
You're happy with that.
I'm so pleased.